Welcome to Behind the Action, the series that takes you on deep dives into building for Google Assistant. I'm Jessica, and today we're going to get started with the basics, and we're going to build our first action using Actions SDK. We'll start by building a little adventure game that's set in an alternative world. Talk to my test app.
Getting the test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to a mighty journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
Yeah, let's do it.
What do you choose to help you on your quest, a dragon, a translator, or a compass?
I want to use a dragon.
The people of Griffinburg will be awestruck by the beauty and power of the ancient dragon. Much to your dismay, the townspeople fall into dispute over who will receive the honor of riding the dragon first. You return home from your quest without everlasting glory or a dragon. That is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
No, thank you.
It pleases me that you are satisfied with your choice. Best of luck on your quest. Farewell.
Now that we know what we're going to be building, let's go over how the conversational actions work. After your action is invoked by the user's input goes to the Google Assistant, where natural language understanding, or NLU, is applied. Then the Google Assistant sends that data of the slot or intent matching to your action. Then the action generates a prompt and sends that to the Google Assistant, and the Google Assistant sends that to the user. This back and forth continues until either the user or the action ends the conversation. Now let's start by building. So here we are in the Actions console, and we're going to click on New Project, and we can name this project whatever we like, and today I'll just be calling this Actions Builder SDK, and then we'll click Create. And this takes us to the selection. There's a couple of different options we could pick, but today we're going to go custom, and then we're going to click on next. And then we're going to start off with a blank page. And then let's click on start building. And so what's happening here is a project is being set up in the Actions console, and it's going to have it's going to be blank, which will be great. Cool. Okay, so we're here in the Actions console. It drops us into develop, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to get the project ID first, so we could use that. And so we're going to click up here on the top right hand corner of the three dots, and we're going to click on project settings, and down here there's a project ID. What you're going to do is you're going to copy this. Now we're going to go to the Google Cloud console, and in here let's make sure that we've selected the right project by adding that in here. So we're going to just paste it, and it will find it, we'll click on it. Fantastic. Now we're going to click on Enable APIs and Services, and in search we're going to put in Actions, and this should pull up the Actions API, and we'll just enable this. That way this allows us to use the SDK and be able to access this project. Okay, so let's go back to the Actions console, and now let's actually go to our terminal, and in here you should have the G-Actions SDK installed. That way you can use that. So we'll do G-Actions, and then pull --project-ID, and let's paste in that project ID. And what's happening now is the project is actually getting pulled from the console to here. So let's do subl here in this directory. And let's check out what we have in here. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go into Actions, and let us click on Actions YAML. And so this is where when an action gets activated or it gets invoked for the first time, it is going to be calling this YAML file. And if we go into custom, you'll be able to see here is the actions intent main that the actions YAML file is referencing. And so it's going to call the actions YAML file, which will call our actions intent main file. And in here, we actually have in YAML, it's structured where there's already some prompt already added to it. So that way not all projects are completely empty. And so this one has just a phrase of start building your action by defining the default invocation. And let's change this up. So let's actually copy paste into here a greeting for the user. And there is a speech and text option. So you could use just the speech, or you could use both of them. This is really nice. So then you can have it say things slightly different versus what appears on the user screen. There might be times that you're going to want to edit the way the pronunciation is or have slight variations as well. So this is where you can do that. And I like to think of this particular main speech variant that you could add this response to as the greeting. This is the first time someone comes in, and so this is a great place. And then you can add that, hello, welcome. This is kind of laying the land of what to expect and letting that context happen. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's save the file and let's go back to our terminal. And let's actually test this out. And we can do that by doing Actions and then deploy. Actions deploy preview. And so this is going to take a little bit, because what's happening is it's creating this project for your action to be able to use in the simulator with this content. And you can imagine the bigger the project you have, the little longer it's going to take for this to happen. And just to go over what the output has been, is it's just giving us a couple of flags for us to be aware of. So don't worry about this when it comes to an app needs to have the short description and other elements like an image. That's all for when we go into production. Right now that we're testing and playing around, it's more than fine. We can go into the action simulator two ways. We can actually copy paste the URL that's listed here, or we can just swipe and go back to the Actions console and then click up on the top test. And this takes us into the simulator. And the simulator is where it will actually simulate your action, and so you can interact with it and test it out. And so on the left-hand side, we actually have the current conversation that you're having with the user. And on the right is a history or logs of that conversation. And so we can activate this action by clicking on the Talk to My Test app.
Getting the test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the land of Griffenbergfordshire. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to a mighty journey.
Fantastic, so it works. So it got the prompt that we had added and was able to use it. So great. So let's continue working off of this by going back. Okay, so what we're going to do here is let's actually go into the customs directory so you can continue this, continue building. And we're actually going to make a new directory called Scenes. And Scenes is a concept with Actions SDK where it can, it's the conversational logic of your action. And so you could think of scenes like scenes in a play or scenes in a movie. So there are moments in the conversation that something happens. So we'll make the directory for scenes, and let's actually make a new scene called start. And so we'll do that by scene/start.yaml. Okay, so let's go into our text editor, and there's our directory of scenes. Oh, where did my tab go? Okay, let's grab that from over there, here. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna just copy from my sample over here. Let me just paste in some code in here. So some code that's happening. And what's happening here is this code is saying on enter, which means when you first enter this scene, there's going to be something that happens. And what's happening is we are going to add a prompt in the, to the conversation, to the prompt queue. And the prompt is, before you continue your request, would you like your fortune to be told? And then we're also including suggestion chips, and you do that by adding them as titles to suggestions. And so what's going to be happening is from our main intent, we're going to have this transition to that start scene. And so what happens behind the hood is when your action gets invoked, the main YAML file will start. It's going to grab that prompt and add it to the prompt queue. And then it's going to transition to start. And then from start, it's going to add the onEnter prompt and then return those two prompts together as one. So let's check that out. And we'll do that by saving the two files. Let's actually make this a little smaller. There you go. And let us do G Actions, deploy preview. That way we could see this in the simulator. Okay, so let's go over back to the simulator. Okay, let's talk to our
Getting the
test app.
test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the land of Griffenbergfordshire. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to a mighty journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
Fantastic. So it worked. So it concatenated, it added those two prompts to the prompt queue and delivered to the user. So let's test out clicking the yes and see what happens.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you try again?
So what's happening here is we haven't told the action how to process the user's input. So let's add that functionality to our action. So we'll do that by going back to our terminal, not Terminator, and let us go. So what we're going to do is let's actually tell our action how to process users' intents. And when it comes to intents, you can think of it as ways to kind of characterize or catalog what users might be able to do or might want to be able to do. And with this question in particular, it's a yes or no. So we're going to want to process if a user says yes and if a user says no. And so I'm creating this yes intent by going subl custom intents yes.yaml. Great. And what we're going to add is some training phrases. And the training phrases are just variations of how what users might say that can match this intent. And so let me just copy some of the yes phrases that I have. So things like, tell me, I would, yes, or why, so just in case if someone's on their phone. And because it's YAML, when it comes to yes or no, we want to use quotation marks as well. And that feels okay for right now. Of course, we want to add more. We want to add more training phrases, but this is just a demo. And now let's go over to no. So let's make a no intent by going to custom intents and then no.yaml. And then same thing, we're going to add training phrases in here. So it's the same structure. And for here, we're going to add things like, nope, I don't want to, or I don't want. And then N, so again, just in case it's on the phone, they could type that in quickly, and then no. So let's save these two. Great, and now let's add these intents to this start scene. And what that means is we're telling the action that when somebody's in the scene, they could say something like yes or no intent, and then something should happen. And so we'll do that by just pasting in this. And so what we're saying here is that if somebody's response to that question, if it matches the yes intent, what we're going to do is we're going to transition them to a fortune scene. We haven't made the fortune scene, but we will. And so that's going to be like the next scene of this journey that users are going to have, is this fortune scene. And if the users say no and it matches to the no intent, what's going to happen is this prompt of I understand and farewell to the user is going to be added to the prompt queue. And then the scene is going to transition to the end of the conversation. So it'll actually end the conversation and close the mic for us. So let us make sure that this works. So let's save that. And then let's do G Actions deploy preview. Fantastic. Now let's go to the simulator. And so that let's restart our test app and click on the button.
Getting the test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the land of Griffinburgfordshire. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to a mighty journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
So let's first try out no.
I understand, stranger. Best of luck on your quest.
Great.
Farewell.
Great, and the action actually ended the conversation, which was what we expected. So let's restart this test and instead say yes.
Here's the test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the land of...
I'll just click yes.
Sorry, my test app isn't responding right now. Please try again soon.
Okay, that's okay that we had that error, because if we click, okay, so on the right hand side, let's go over what's going on over here. So we have the logs that are happening on the right. And if we click on yes and open this window up, you'll be able to see that there are these logs within the larger logs. And in here, if we click on the interaction matched, what we could see here is that the yes intent was matched and it was going to the next scene of fortune. But fortune doesn't exist, and so that's why it errored out. So it worked, which is great. What we expected, fantastic. So what we could do is we can build out that fortune scene. So let's go back to our terminal or to our code. And what we're going to do here is let us build the next scene, which we're going to call the fortune scene. And this scene's job is to ask the question of choosing one thing out of 3 and processing the user's data. And then after that, it'll transition to something. It'll give the fortune, depending on what the user said, and then it'll transition to the next scene. And so the fortune scene is going to be all about asking that question of, out of these 3 options, which one do you choose? So let's build that out. And we'll start off by by making the fortune scene. So we will do Sybil custom, then scenes, and then fortune.yaml. Okay. And, okay, let me find that. Let me put that over here. Okay, great. So we're going to start off with slots. And slot filling is kind of, you can think of it like a form. It's the way that we can ask for particular pieces of data. And this is a little different than through intents, because this is more, again, like a form. This is data that we need. And in this scene, we can ask for multiple slots if we wanted to. But we're only going to use one for this example. And this slot in particular is we want to be able to capture the options. And so we want to be able to capture the 3 options we want to give to the user, which in this case is the compass, the translator, and a dragon. So to do that, we have to tell our action how to know that these things belong together and that they're important to us. And so we could do that with types. Types is a way that we can flag certain words and organize them and be able to have synonyms of those words, and we could process that data. And so before we actually make our slots, let's actually go make our type. And so we'll do that by making a directory in the custom. And so we'll have that be called custom types. So this is a new directory that will organize all our types that we have. And then we'll make our custom types, and this is going to be called available options.yaml. So this is going to contain all that data of the different options that the user could potentially say. So let me, with a little magic, let me just paste in my options that I have. Okay, so we have these entities, and these entities are dragon, translator, compass, and those are the 3 options that we're going to give to the user. And for each of these entities, we have these synonyms. And so this, you can think of it as a key value pair. There is the dragon, which is the key, and then the values, potential values, are dragon, hydra, and lizard. And so you can have more elements in the values to be able to capture that type of data. And then of course we have it for the remainder for translator and for compass as well. And we are making this match type to be an exact match. So we want it to be, if they do say the word decoder, that is what we want to be able to process. So we're flagging it. It has to be that word in particular. And so let's save this file. And now let's go over and add this type to our slots into that fortune scene. So let's go back to fortune and let me paste in our slots. Fantastic. And so in here, you'll be able to see that there is the available options up below. And so this is how we're able to grab the type available options and pull that through. So now we're telling the action that this is data to use that type in this fortune slot. And so though that type is called available options, what we're going to do is we're going to call it something different within this slot. And so in this slot, it's going to be chosen options. And the reason why you might want to do that is having a more generic type means that you could use that type in other places. And within this slot, I'm using this as the chosen option that the user actually chose. Another example you can think of is like colors. You can have a type called colors, and then in the slot, you could call it favorite color or least favorite color. And so you could do elements like that. So we're being more specific with this, with the slot name. And it's also what's going to be the parameter name as well. So when we use this later, it's the same name. So we've named our slot, and now what we're going to do is we are going to add a prompt. So do you choose, what do you choose to help you on the quest? A dragon, a translator, or a compass? And then we'll add suggestion chips here. And then we have this slot as required to be true. And so what that means is when we enter into this scene, these are going to be, this slot is going to be processed and flagged as one to process. So we've done that. And now let us save. Great. And now let's try this out. So let us deploy this preview and try this to make sure that this works. Great, now let's move over to the simulator. Let's restart our tests and then talk to my test app.
Let's get the test version of my test app.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the land of Griffinburg. What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, a translator, or a compass?
Let's do dragon.
Sorry, my test app isn't responding right now.
That's because we haven't done
Please try
the
again
next
soon.
component of our action, but I was able to enter into that fortune scene. We got that message. Now let's continue building. So let's go back to our code and let's add to our fortune scene. And so what we're going to do is when the user provides input, what happens is that input gets processed and the assistant will either do intent matching or slot matching. And so I'll actually match it to the slot. And so what we could do is we could add conditions to our scene. So we can add that logic. So let me just paste in the logic. Great. And so this is one conditional event that we've added. And within this one, we have, actually, let me make this a little bigger. Okay. So what we have here is we have scene slot status double equals final. And that is a way that you can go and use to identify if all the slots are filled. If all the slots are filled, then this expression results to being true. And so conditions are all of our statements, and so it gets processed true and false. And if they evaluate to being true, then that condition gets triggered, and then any of the processes after that will get done. So this one we have it where we want to make sure all the slots are filled, and then we're using the double ampersand to say we also want something else to be true. And what we're going to do here is do session.params and then chosen options. And this is referencing to the intents chosen options. And so what we're saying is if the chosen options is dragon, which is the key in our key value pairs that we made for the available options. So if it's dragon, what's going to happen is it's going to add this prompt to the prompt queue. And so if the user says dragon, that slot will get matched. This condition will evaluate to true, and then the prompt will be added to the prompt queue. Okay, so let me just grab the rest of these. So let me paste in the other conditions. So here's this condition, and then one more. Let me just grab it over here, and then let me paste that in down here. Okay, fantastic. Okay, cool. So now we have our 3 conditions for the 3 options that we're giving to the user. So if we scroll up, you can see that here we have the translator and the compass. And so if the user's, if what the user has said, that gets matched to a slot, whatever the key it results to, that'll get looked up. And if it matches with, well, depending on which one it matches, it will add that message, that prompt to the prompt queue. Great, so let's try this out. So let's deploy preview, and then let's let that happen. Okay, great. So let's go over to our simulator. Okay, let's reset our test. Talk to our test app.
Getting the test version of my test app.
What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, a translator. The people of Gryffindor will be awestruck by the beauty and power of the ancient dragon. Much to your dismay, the townspeople fall into dispute over who will receive the honor of riding the dragon first. You return home from your quest without everlasting glory or a dragon.
Great, so we got that working, and so now what we want to do is we want to continue the conversation to the next phase of it, so the next scene. And what I'm thinking would be great is to introduce a game loop. And so we could create this new scene called again. And that scene's responsibility is to ask the question, do you want to play again? And if it's a yes, we'll have them play again, answering that question and giving them their fortune. Or if they say no, we can exit the action as well. So let's go back to our code and let's make the new scene. Actually, before we make the new scene, let's transition all of our conditions to that new scene that we have. So let's go back here and then transition to scene, and then we're going to call this one again. So let me just copy this, and then I'll paste this below. So let me enter, go back. Okay, paste, and then let's go down, enter, let's go back, and then paste. Cool. So this fortune scene contains the slot and contains conditions, but what it doesn't contain is on enter like we did for our start scene. And the reason why we don't have an on enter message is we want to keep the slot message with the slot. And so if we had moved the slot message of choosing one of the 3 to on enter, what happens is if we add another slot, it's going to ask that question, but it's not, then we're going to have to manage did that question get answered, and making sure it doesn't add the next slot's question to it as well. And so this is a way that's why you want to organize it this way. Your questions should belong to, when it comes to your slots, those things go together. And in that particular scene, there was no need for an on enter. But for the scene that we're going to be making now of again, let's add that. So first we have to make the scene of again. So let's go to our terminal and let us add this scene. And so we will subl custom scenes and then again.yaml. Great. And now let me go over and copy my on enter stage data. Okay. Let me grab that. Okay, so let me paste that in here. And so for this scene, we're using the on enter. So every time a user first enters into the scene, this message will be delivered or be added to the prompt queue. And so what we're adding is to the prompt queue is a message acknowledging the user. No, let me show you. Let me go this way. Okay, so what I see for you, this is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another feature? And then of course we have our suggestion chips right here. And let us keep adding. So let's add the intent handlers for the yes scene. And so if the user says yes, which again, we're using the same yes intent that we used prior. And so the yes intent, because it is generic and it's just the idea and the notion of yes or agreement, we're able to reuse the same intent. And because it's attached to the scene, when a user is in this scene, our conversation logic knows that when a user says yes, it's to this particular question, which is great. And so what's going to happen is we'll transition, if a user says yes, to the fortune scene. Great. And now let me just go over here and let me copy our no intent. So let me paste that here. Enter. Go back. Okay. And so in this one, we are going to add a message. And so our intent, or noting that it's the no intent is down here. And then up here is where we're going to add the prompt acknowledging the user that they're fine with or they don't want to do this again. And then we'll transition to the end conversation. And so the conversation will end. So let's save this. And then let's deploy preview. Great. Okay, now let's go over to our simulator. Let's reset our test and click on Talk to My Test app.
Getting the test version of my test app.
Let's click yes.
What do you choose to help you on your quest?
Let's go dragon.
The people of Griffinburg will be awestruck by the beauty and power of the ancient dragon. Much to your dismay, the townspeople fall into dispute over who will receive the honor of riding the dragon first. You return home from your quest without everlasting glory or a dragon. That is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
And so it added the prompt from the again scene. So let's check out our event logs to see how that happened. So let's open this event log for when we said dragon. Let's go down. And so let's open up the slot matching. And so here you could see that what we said was dragon, and it was able to match that to our slot. And the key of the slot name is chosen options. And we have this original and resolved. And so with this, that means that what the user said was dragon with a capital D, but in our keys for that type, we have a lowercase d. And so that's why there's that difference. Okay, so that matched. So now let's go down to conditions. And so here you could see that the conditions are met. So we get, it was successful. And the prompt for that condition gets added to the prompt queue. Let's scroll down. And then we transition to the again, let's go back. So right here it says we transition to the again scene. Let's go back down, and here you can see that it added the on enter again scenes prompt. And so now we have this one large prompt for the user along with the suggestion chips. And then that's where it stopped. So let's make this smaller and let's click yes.
What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, a translator, or a compass?
Let's try a different one. Let's do with compass.
The compass will help you find the mystical and ancient library of Griffinburg. Among its infinite stacks of dusty books, you find one entitled Wisdom of the Ages. By the time you've read the 50,000-page tome, the townspeople have forgotten their problems. You will write a second edition of Wisdom of the Ages, but have limited commercial success. That is what I see for you. Would you like to choose a different option and explore another future?
Okay, so let's try no.
It pleases me that you are satisfied with your choice.
Right prompt.
Best of luck on your quest. Farewell.
Cool. So it gave us the right prompt, and it ended the conversation for us, which is what we wanted. Great. So we have a working action. It works. It's doing the happy path. That's what we generally call when there's a flow that we anticipate users to be in the main flow, or one of like a path that a user might not have trouble with, or what we expect the user to go through. So that's generally the happy path, but not everybody goes down the happy path or does what we expect, and that's okay. And that is the fun part about being a voice developer, is we get to think and kind of figure out how do we support those users when they go off the beaten path. So I could see there might be a spot in this conversation where people could do some funny stuff. And so let's go to that spot in the conversation. So let's talk to our test app. Let's click yes. And now in here, I can definitely see people not necessarily wanting to choose a dragon, a translator, or compass. They might want to do something different. And so right now, if a user were to put in something else, maybe like something like I want to use a horse. Right now it matches our no match intent, which we should update and make it have a better prompt. But I want to highlight the fact that I could see somebody saying something like that. They want to use a horse, or they want to use gold, or something within that fantasy realm that I'm not supporting, and I want to give them a better, I want to address it and be proactive with them. And so let's actually add that. Let's add to this conversation. So when a user's here and they say, I want to use a horse, or I want to use gold, we can go, yeah, I'm seeing into the future, and that thing is not going to help you. But you could choose one out of these three and I'll give you a fortune. And so that way we can redirect them to answer that question and remind them of the three options that they have. So let's actually build that out. So let's go over to our code. And in here, what we want to do is to do this, we want to add an intent to our fortune scene. That way, when they're in the fortune scene, if they see something that doesn't match our slots, or their slot matching doesn't happen, we could do an intent match. And within an intent match, what we could do is we can actually add parameters. We could use intent parameters, and we can actually pull out pieces of data from the user with intent parameters. And the way we'll do this is kind of similar to what we did with the available options. We'll make a type called unavailable options, and then we'll make that type add that data. So then we can tell the assistant that these things are things I want you to be aware of, and these are specific pieces of data that we're going to treat differently. And so we can make the unavailable options type, and then we can add that to our intent so we can capture these other options. So let's go in and let us actually make the type first. So let's subble custom types, and we're going to call this unavailable options .yaml. Great. So let's grab that. So let me just copy the list that I have and paste that over. Great. It's almost exactly the same. It is exactly the same structure as our available options, but this one has money, horse, magic, and a phone. I could definitely see somebody saying something to the fact of I want to bring my cell phone. So what we have here is we have our keys, which is money, and then our values, which is going to be money, cash, and gold. And so it's structured the same as the other one. And so we have it for each of the keys for this unavailable option. So let's save this. Great. And now let us make the intent that's going to be using this. So let us go and do subble custom. Okay, so we'll do subble custom intents. And this one we'll call other option.yaml because this is what's going to be seen in the fortune scene. So let me grab that file and bring that over here. Well, there we go. Let me throw that all the way back there. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go step by step. So same thing in each training phrases. And so I've added some training phrases like I want to use spells. I really, really want to use a phone, magic, cash. I want to ride a horse, right? And so this will add the training phrases, and we're telling the NLU that this is how someone could express this intent, but it's not pulling in the parameters part. And so let us pull that by adding parameters. So let's copy it. Let's copy what I have and let's paste that in all the way to the top. Great. And so here we're actually able to tell the assistant that for this intent, we're going to be using parameters, and we're going to be using the type of unavailable options, which is the type we just made. But in here, we're going to call it chosen unavailable option. And so we're going to be referring to this type in this intent as chosen unavailable option. And so now what we have to do is we have to modify our training phrases. So let me just grab that. Let me paste that right here. Great. And so it's the same training phrases, but I've marked them up. And so that way, what we have here is there's spells, and we're tagging that it's a chosen unavailable option. And so we're going to do that for each of these, and that way it's explicit that phone, magic, cash, these are all based off of the type of unavailable option, which in here in this intent will be the unavailable, chosen unavailable option. Okay, so let's save that and let us add this to our fortune scene. So let's go to our fortune scene, and we are going to go, let me grab the intent handler information, and okay, let's copy that. And then let's come back over here. Okay, let's come back over here. Okay, I think I'm going to put it right there. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put it right here, and this is our intent events. And so we have the handler here with the intent of other option. And so when this other option gets matched, this intent gets matched, what's going to happen is it is going to add this prompt to the prompt queue. And so I've seen the future and let me go over here so we can see the whole statement. And here is where we can denote to grab the intent parameter chosen available option. And so we're able to grab that and use that data within this prompt. And we're going to be using .original, which is what the user said and how they said it, or how they typed it as well. And then finish the message. So let's do save. And just note, we're not adding a transition here, not because we're going to add it later. We actually don't need a transition and for this intent and how we're building it. So let's deploy this so we could see how that works. So let's deploy this. Okay, great. So deployed. Now let's go to our simulator and let's reset our test. Click on test.
Here's the test version of my test app.
Let's click yes.
Yes. What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, I have seen the future, and a horse will not aid you on your journey. What do you choose to help you on your quest? A dragon, a translator, or a compass?
Yay! So we have a working action. And again, the reason why we didn't need to add we didn't have to add a transition and it worked is because it went to the, after an intent gets matched, conditions get reevaluated. All the conditions are still false, and then it adds the slots prompt back to the prompt queue, and that gets delivered to the user. So we have a working action. It has a supported path. So let's actually push everything that we've done to the project itself. So let's do that by doing G-Actions push. Oh, great. And this is pushing all our code. So let's go check it out. Let's click on develop and let's open our types. And there you can see our unavailable options. Okay, now let's check out our intent of other options. Let's scroll down, and here you can see that there's the intent parameters here, and that we're using the data type of the unavailable option, and we're going to call it as a parameter chosen unavailable option. And then up here you can see that the words have been highlighted based off the annotation that we did in our files, and so all of these correspond to one another. And now let's check out our fortune scene. So in our fortune scene, what we have here is you can see there's the conditions that have the statements that we added. And when those statements are true, they're going to transition to again. And within each of those conditions, there are the prompts for the user. And now let's scroll down. And first, let's just talk about the other options. And so here is where when other options is met, there is no transition. And so what happens is that prompt gets added, and then it goes back to conditions. Conditions get evaluated. They're all false. And then slot filling happens. So let's check out slot filling. So let's click on chosen options. And up here we have that we're pulling in the type of available options, and we're calling it chosen options. And we've highlighted that we want to make this slot required. Now let's scroll down. Here you can see we've added the prompt and then the prompt itself. Fantastic! If you want to learn more about using Actions SDK, check out our docs for more information. Join our dev community on Reddit, where you can chat with other Action on Google devs and stay up to date by following us on Twitter. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see what you built.